Hello and welcome to Stylist Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I've got Debby Donnelly Addison. Hello, my love.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Tired, but I have a cup of tea. I have two dogs. I've absolutely run out of fucks today, so I'm really ready for this chat.
Good. I'll just fill the listeners in about what you do and where we kind of first connected as well. So we first met in a photography studio in the south of Manchester, and you've a woman of many roles. You're a writer, you own a cake shop, you're a food photographer, a food stylist, doing lots of different things. You've got one book already, you've got another book coming out, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my days. And a dog
Yeah.
mum as well, on top of that.
Oh, yes.
Busy lady.
I know. It never stops. Like, I actually thought that I'd have a day off today. And then, as you know, I was messaging you, like, filled with rage and B&M about to smash someone in the face because I've got a client who wants a very specific type of bowl for their campaign. And I was just losing my fucking marbles. But then it means tomorrow, I actually don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I might be off. I might be taking photos. I might be writing. I have no idea. It is just a different thing every single day.
Yeah, I think this is what keeps we were just saying, I feel like it keeps our creative minds going, doing something different every day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to think that this would be my idea of hell. I used to get up in the morning and have quite a regular job.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, that was my idea of hell as well. But you're kind of in like sort of, I don't know how things are now, but when I was in school in the 90s, long ago, it was kind of hammered into you that you just pick one thing that you're good at and then you do it every day. And you do it till you retire, and then you finish doing it, and that's your identity. And I really bought into that idea for a very, very long time. I don't regret it, but, in hindsight, could have saved about 60 fucking grand had I bought straight into it. But the thing is, I bought into this idea of this one job, and I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I could be working in a job where I do so many different things, and that one week I could be shooting a food campaign, I could be writing a food column, I could be in another country, I could be sitting in some rando's house in Montenegro as they're making dinner for me, I could be getting tear gassed in Toulouse, another super fun adventure on my travels. I could be getting lost in a jungle in Tobago at 1 a.m, all these super duper fun things that I used to think, I wouldn't like that, but now I couldn't work any other way. I couldn't go back to an office. I'm not even going to tell you what I'd rather do than go back to working in an office. It's interesting and it's different. But I couldn't do it any other way.
Yeah, I think this is the theme I'm getting from creatives, is that they like to juggle lots of different things, lots of different projects, some personal, some work. And a lot of us have got dogs, kids, to juggle as well, husbands or partners and houses and travel. And you just sound so busy. But every time I look at your Instagram, I'm like, oh my God, you've been up in a hot air balloon and you've been in Marrakesh and you've been in here. And I'm like, please just take me in your pocket, please. I just want to come. I'll steam your dresses for you.
Like the travel stuff. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love traveling. I love complaining about traveling. I love coming back and whinging about all the things that went wrong. It's one of my all-time favorite hobbies. I go away, shit goes down, and then I just spend the whole time bitching about it, and then I write an article saying it was great. But the thing is, creatives, we all do that. We all work these crazy hours and we get totally obsessed with our projects. They totally consume us. And then we do nothing but bitch about them. Just great. You've got a podcast for bitching about being a creative. I think it's fucking fantastic. because no one else will listen to me anymore. I try, but the faces just glaze over. And it's just like, Jesus, Debbie, will you shut the fuck up? So, yeah. we're all rascals for it, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think as well, like, I don't know about you, I'm trying to put in some boundaries so that I don't look at LinkedIn at 10 o'clock at night while I'm in bed, and I don't message clients on a Saturday, or, I'm trying to put these boundaries in so that I actually spend time with my other half. And I'm finding that really hard. It's hard to not answer something instantly. And like
Yes.
this Friday just gone, I had a message. We were driving back actually from seeing my other half's grandparent in hospital. So I was driving back, and an email popped up, on my sat nav, and I just thought, leave it till Monday. They're not. By the time I get home, they're not going to be in the office. So there's no point answering it. It's going to make no difference whether I email on at 9 p.m. on Friday night or 8 a.m. on Monday morning, because it will still be in the inbox at the same time.
Well, exactly. But I think one of the problems with being freelance is I think sometimes there's quite a heavy expectation that you will answer quite quickly.
Yeah.
And it really pisses me off.
Yeah.
I'll get an email, and then 20 minutes later, I'll have a message pop up on my WhatsApp from the person who sent it saying, oh, did you get this email? Like, yes, I did get your email, but I'm out and I'm not going to answer it right now. It's really, really frustrating, and particularly because we're all self-employed. So you kind of feel like you're at the behest of the client all the time. And of course you are, to a degree. You want to do a good job and you want to be there for them. But at the same time, I totally get what you mean. I still have emails come through out of hours, but I try not to answer them unless it's something I get really excited about. I'll try and leave it. I actually left LinkedIn a while ago now because it is just the new home of sleaze.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it anymore. Oh my God, what happened to it?
It's so minging.
Oh my God. Right. Honestly, I won't name the brand because it might be detrimental to my career. I might name it later because I might decide I don't give a fuck. But anyway, right. So as is now, there's a brand of, I'll call it a baking product. Yeah. Because if I was to name the type that it is, you would immediately know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so what happened is I hadn't been on LinkedIn in ages, and this guy who owns the company and has one of the surnames of the brand in his surname, so very recognisable chap, he starts following me on LinkedIn. And I thought, oh, this could be interesting. You start thinking, oh, work. What could this be? And I'm sitting there, and then a message comes up, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell my agent about this. And then I open it, and it's like, hey, Deb, have you ever been to San Francisco? Because I've got a place in San Francisco and you should come see me. I was like, oh, fuck off, dude. I honestly thought you were going to ask me to do some work or something there. And it just got really sleazy really quickly. And yeah, it's weird. I don't engage with LinkedIn anymore. It's just turned into this absolute hellhole of sleaze. No time for it.
Yeah, I've not had anything quite that bad on it, but it is a lot of because I put that I'm a stylist, I get a lot of middle-aged gentlemen who think they can shoot and call themselves photographers message me asking for stuff, asking for me to style for them, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but no. Or I get loads of clip retouch stuff, from the guys from India and stuff, like hit and hoping, which I get. I hit and hope email people all the time, so it's fine.
Of course.
And I'm always polite to people and hey, it's not in my realm. If I'm shooting, the photographer normally does it, what have you. And I'm normally I'm just polite, but I have noticed it's a little bit more sleazy. It's become the kind of corporate Facebook of the world.
Yeah, I think that the way it seems to have gone, and I think it's probably because of social media generally, those sort of boundaries have dropped
Yeah.
significantly. Like, I remember when, I mean, gosh, this is the same across all social media now. I remember when, if you wanted to work with a brand, you had to get in touch with them through quite formal channels.
Yeah.
Usually I'd have to get my agent to get in touch. It would be a very tough process. And now I can go online and just pick out any sort of, really big international brand, and you can just hit them up on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
Instagram, and they'll get back to you, and you can sort things pretty quickly. And I think because those boundaries have been dropped, people kind of feel that, they will speak to you more as though you are a friend rather
Mm.
than a co-worker, which to a degree I like,
Yeah.
until it gets to the point when they're asking me what I'm wearing today. And it's just like, dude, it's so disappointing, because there have been times when I have been in conversation with, how do I put it? Because obviously I'm not going to name any names, that'd be a bit naughty. People who are quite notable.
Yeah.
People who will be recognizable, and people with brands that are very recognizable, where the person you're conversing with is the face of the brand.
Yeah.
And it can be going so well, and then it goes creepy. And it's really fucking annoying, because, if I'm putting that effort in to make that connection business wise, I'm working my arse off here. And to have somebody then try and turn it around, you then, oh my gosh, I don't know about you. I don't know whether this is a female thing or a me thing. But you then feel like it's going to be very hard, or it's going to be a waste of time to carry on this conversation without it going in the direction that they're wanting it to go in. Because if it doesn't go in that direction and they don't get what they want, it's highly unlikely that I'm going to get what I want. And what I want is business interaction. I want to work with that person, and what they want are nudes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the hell? It's really annoying. And what makes it so difficult is that level of personal interaction is actually expected by a lot of places now, particularly younger brands. They will expect you to just get in touch personally. They love that personal approach, which in a way is great. In another way, it's really fucking awful. And you have that, and you get in touch with them, and then if it kind of goes off kilter, it's so awkward and it's horrid. And particularly if it's people who they might work for a brand that you'll probably work with in future, or if it's somebody who is. I'll just put right. Okay, so okay, so let me put it this way. It's like, I've written one book,
Yeah.
and I'm literally just getting started on book number 2. I'm taking my time on it. And it's an arena that I really want to work in. And it's very difficult when you have sort of male authors in that sort of genre who they try and take advantage of that. And it can be really, really disheartening, because for one, we all want help and we all want to step up. And it's really frustrating when somebody says, oh, I can help you with this, or let me intro you to this person, or I can do X, Y, Z. And they make you all these promises and stuff. And then it becomes very clear they're expecting something very specific in return. And it really does change. I'm just like, 1 second, my dog's going to bark now. He could see something. Let me just usher him out. Off he goes before he absolutely loses his marbles. Just one sec.
Cutie.
Yeah. So I'll go back to what I was saying then. It's it's incredibly disheartening when you feel like you get that little glimmer of hope in that there's somebody who might want to help or assist you in what you're doing. And then it turns out that actually they don't want to do that. They're after something in particular and you're not willing to give it.
Yeah.
It can be awfully frustrating, and it's something that I would have hoped at my age would have buggered off by now. But it's something that's really frustrating and really annoying, particularly when I'm a very open person,
Mm,
and I am probably I probably give a bit too much to some people, and it can really be taken advantage of. I think we're all like that in the creative industries, really, aren't we? We're all
yeah,
people pleasers,
yeah, yeah. I
and
think
it leaves you feeling rough.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, I think as well, there's this culture. I'm going to go a bit deep here, but there's a kind of culture of like women are still seen as objects to some people who have an awful lot of money, and some of
Yeah.
us are here to us women are here to make the choices we want and to do the things we want and to get business the way we want, not the
Mm.
way that like, not everything is an exchange for, let's be honest, like sexual favors. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, that's not how business works nowadays. And I think if you want to fuck with us business women, you need to stop asking to see our bloody Bridget Jones pants, because it ain't happening. Do you know what I mean? Like,
It's
it's not good. It's not a good look, because then also, like, you then say to somebody, oh, well, that person was creepy. They're never going to find people to work for them.
exactly. You said about photographers on LinkedIn before. There was a guy I worked with who you've probably worked with him. It's a guy
Yeah.
somewhere in a studio in the Northwest. It's like working with fucking Austin Powers. He used to be a fashion photographer, and the shit he comes out with, and mate, we are photographing biscuits.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. And honestly, he was the only guy I've ever worked with where I've actually walked off set. And I've left the building. I only went back because I left my fucking case in there. If I hadn't left it, I wouldn't have gone out. I rage drove out of the building, and then I drove off. I went to this Waitrose, and I went in, and I'm sitting there rage eating a sandwich in the car park thinking, you bastard.
Yeah.
And then I realised I had to go back.
Oh, God.
But the thing is, I think that like the issue is in food photography generally, because it's such a huge thing now, branding, imagery, all of that is massive.
Mm.
A lot of people will specifically train in food photography, but there are people who used to work in fashion when there was a lot more print work available, who now don't have anything, as much work in that area to do. So they've gone over to food because, like everyone does in this industry, we're always sidestepping into different projects and trying different things. And he had worked in fashion for a long time. And some of the stuff he came out with and the stories he told about the women he used to work with, and I'd just sit there looking at him, and you look like fucking Danny DeVito, mate. And you're sitting here trying to tell me about all these women you reckon you've been having it off with over the years. And honestly, oh my God, Charlotte, he was trying to tell me, he was arguing with me that I've definitely never seen as big a boat as he has seen.
Oh, for
He
fuck's
was
sake.
literally like, no, I've definitely seen a bigger boat than you. Like, how can you say that? Like, everything you said, he's done one better. But I think that's because it was guys like that worked in a time where if you worked in photography, chances are, back then, a lot of the fashion photographers were male. And women models have always been paid a lot more than male models. And they get a lot more, they used to get a lot more print work because in the sort of 90s, early 2000s, there was so many female-based print magazines.
Yeah.
Because, where the hell else am I going to learn the latest song lyrics? Where am I going to do a quiz to see if the guy I fancies me back? No, he doesn't. And basically find out how I'm going to look super duper hot with pink clipping highlights when I go back to school on Tuesday. So there was all that work back then, and it was a totally different time. And you could say different things like, when I when it was like the 90s, there was so many things that could be said, and I look back now at some of the things some of my friends used to say, some of the things my older relatives used to come out with,
Yeah.
and I think, Jesus Christ, it was a totally different time for everyone in terms of sexism, in terms of racism, dare I say it.
Yeah.
People were not as considerate, and times have changed. You could not walk into a studio now and say the things that you used to be able to say on set of Ms. Magazine in 1997.
Yeah.
You can't do that, but some people still do. And now they're working in food and they're in our space, and I don't want them there. I want them to fuck off. I want Danny DeVito to pack up, not the real Danny DeVito, who is awesome. I mean, this photographer, I want him to pack up and go back to the 90s where he fucking belongs.
Yeah.
And not bother us anymore. But there isn't, I think it's a residual sort of approach to work and working with women that is dying out.
Yeah.
But some of them are still there. Those little cretins are still creeping out of the cracks.
Yeah.
Piss me off.
It's like they're gradually, literally dying off.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I used
You're
to
trying to tell me something.
I used to work for somebody who was similar to that, but he owned the business, and he sat next to me with his shirt undone, showing his like old man grey chest hair. And he honestly, Deb, he sat there with his legs really wide at this table, like slammed his wrists on this table, and the fucking cufflinks that he was wearing said "sex god."
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God.
And it was like literally the sleaziest. This was only not even 50 years ago, mate. It was so bad. And he just sat there like promising the fucking world. And I looked at him, and I was studio manager. I looked at him and I thought, we can't deliver this. And he'd done that deal on a handshake in a strip club to get that client. This is in the 2000s.
They still walk among us.
Yeah,
they're there.
Oh my God! Just like, I'm ready to push them all off a cliff. They can just all go.
Sex god cufflinks. They're the equivalent of heart-shaped jewelry. No woman buys herself heart-shaped jewelry, right? Yeah. Only men buy it for them. Yeah. Women would not buy a man sex god cufflinks. There's no way. Who would want to feed a man's ego that much? Fuck's sake. No, they already think they're great. We don't need to give them any more than that. He has clearly gone out and bought them for himself and thought, yeah. I'll just casually, I'll just very casually just lift my sleeve up, and she will glance across and see them and be overcome with desire. Yeah. She just put, and fucking hell. These
honestly,
people, jeez.
Honestly. Minging, absolutely fucking minging. And I don't stand for stuff anymore. My friend said to me, and I repeat myself all the time with this, but she says, you're do no harm, take no shit. And I'm similar to you. If somebody starts like having a bit of a go, I'm like, don't talk to me like that, and I walk off because I can't be bothered. I cannot be bothered. And if someone wants to one up me, which happened to me with a similar kind of story, but it was a female stylist was like, well, I've been here and I've done this and I've done this, and like everything was one up, and I just said, all right, you win. Don't worry, it's not life's not a fucking competition. You carry on. Yeah. But I do think the dinosaurs of our industry are literally dying. And hopefully they make us some good oil, but they are literally awful. And it's horrible when you're a female as well, and you're like, your shit, what you're doing there, your job inside out, your business inside out, and then they look at you as though you're just an object, and that really annoys me.
It's really frustrating, and I think the other thing as well, and this is similar sort of things, slightly different tangents. In our business, sometimes the creative brief that you're getting sent through might be sent through from somebody who doesn't necessarily have a technical food background or a styling background. And you can be asked to do things that just aren't possible, and they say, well, just make it possible. Like, no, you're not listening to me, it's not possible. And your knowledge and your expertise is immediately discounted. It's completely pushed out of the door, and you get told, oh, well, you need to make it look this way. I've had like times when I have done things for quite big campaigns, And I have done it to spec, and I have sent the photos beforehand, before I've even driven the finished article to the studio. I have done all of that. Everything's been signed off and fine. And then, because everybody on the team wants to have some form of creative input, they want to say that they have added something to it. They will ask you to change something about it. That could be something completely impossible. Like, I remember there being, try not to give away too much detail here. there was an issue with, I was working at a studio once, and we were shooting a recipe that I had written,
Mhm.
and it was for a babka, which is a Jewish braided sort of yeast. It's kind of a yeasted cake. Some people call it bread, but technically it's more of a dessert thing.
Mhm.
And I had been asked to do this recipe. I'd written it, I'd sent them photos, everything had been signed off. And then we went and we shot it, and it was for a really, it was a big job, this. It was an important one, and it was one I was very proud to be part of. But then I got feedback back from the office, and they said, "Oh, that babka's wrong. A babka's meant to have a hole in the middle." And I was like, "No, it can. You can make a wreath-shaped babka if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. Like, most people make babkas in a loaf tin. I mean, in this sense, I've made it circular, but they said, oh, it's meant to have a hole in the middle." And this, I won't name, this photographer who I was working with, and he is bloody lovely, right? He is so much fun to work with. He is an incredible guy. And I was working with him, and he was the middleman, and he was relaying to the office, and he was just being told back from the office. Again, he's not a food guy himself, but he is just being told back, no, that's not how a babka's meant to look. It's meant to have a hole in the middle. And it was probably the first time I'd stood up for myself in that sense. Like, rather than just trying to push to change it, I said, look, if you want me to do another one, I'll do you another one, but it ain't happening today because it's yeasted. It's going to take hours. But secondly, I want it on record that babka does not have to have a fucking hole in the middle. It's just like, I have made this hundreds upon hundreds of times. I wrote a recipe and you approved it. I sent a trial photo and you approved it.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me, who is the professional baker who does this for a living, you are telling me that I don't know what a fucking babka is. And I felt so sorry for our mutual photographer friend, because he looked terrified, and he's saying, I can't relay onto them what you're telling me to say. I go, yes, you fucking can. Right, you get on that phone. I think it was towards the end of a very long and very intensive campaign. And I was literally like, right, pass me the phone, and I will tell them how a babka works. And if they want to come down here and speak to me about it, they fucking can, my friend, because I'm absolutely sick and tired of this conversation. And do you know what, though? I stood my ground. I got my point across, but I'll tell you what, Charlotte, still had to remake that fucking babka.
Oh, fucking hell.
And you'll appreciate this from a styling point of view, right? So get on this. I make it in the wreath shape. We bring it in the next day. And what happened is they asked for the hole in the middle of the babka to have a bowl in it with a dipping caramel sauce, which is a lovely idea, but I could have just cut a fucking hole in the first one that I brought in the day before and put a bowl in it, because you wouldn't have known any difference.
Holy shit. That is a classic case of somebody being like a middleman and wanting their opinion on it. Because I find that happens a lot. Like, definitely with big corporations as well. They have plenty of people who are like, well, I'm a senior, I'm a midweight, so I need to do this and this and this. And I think there's a lot of bureaucracy, if that's the right way to pronounce that word, because they get stuck on it, to around that kind of thing, because people get some sort of power from being a senior or a head of, and then they're like, well, I think, and you're like, well, you don't know though. So,
I mean, there are some clients that I've worked with where I am very aware that everyone on that team has to show that they've contributed in some way. So I completely relax on those, because I think, do you know what? Everyone's going to want to say, they're going to say, can we just move that 1 inch to the side? Can you just take out that linen and swap it for a slightly lighter shade?
Yeah.
I know that's going to happen. And I know it's going to happen because they're going to get grilled, and they're lovely, lovely people. But I know that they're going to go into the office and they're going to get asked, what did you do? What was your contribution to this set of images? I get that.
Yeah.
But when you're in a sort of, with the big, without naming, but I'm sure you know who I mean, with the bigger clients, there's certainly a higher level of pressure, and there's a lot more expected in a far short period of time. So when people start throwing in opinions like that, particularly at the very, very last minute as well, as is often the case, 4:45, oh, can you not just change this and shoot it again? Like that, I've already eaten it. It is too late for you.
It's gone.
It is long gone. It will never be seen again. But no, I think that there are some places where people, I feel that for them a little bit, because I understand that they have to show that they're doing their job. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I know that there are some people out there who literally wake up in the morning and choose twattery that day. They just get up and think, do you know what? What am I going to do to ruin someone's day today? Donno's in the studio. I'm going to be an absolute gobshite the minute she walks through the door. There are probably I don't get big demands. That doesn't happen. But do you know what I mean? It's that there's so many different power dynamics in this sort of arena, and you have to kind of get to understand who is doing it because they are, under pressure, like we all are. They are trying to make a career for themselves. They're trying to do well, and who is just generally a dickhead. You have to figure out who they are very quickly.
Yeah, this is it. I had not so long ago, maybe back end of last year, somebody said, can you get all the creases out of a fitted sheet?
Fuck off.
And I just went, no. Like I said, I've already pulled it and done it, because it was going from a corner of an angle. And this was a younger art director who asked me. And I was like, no, hun. Like, I've got as many out as I possibly can. It's a solid white surface, retouchable, can fill it in. It's like, it's not fucking possible. I don't have 3 hours to get rid of
do that. But you say that about retouch though. I remember shooting something once. It was, again, I won't name what it was, but it was an electrical product sold by a retailer that basically did not do what it claimed to do. And they wanted me to make it look like it did what it claimed to do. And they had a previous image from when it had been shot 2 years before. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how the hell did that stylist get that to look? Because it was crisp and it was precise. And I'm spending all day on this bastard thing. I'm losing my marbles. And I spoke to the photographer and he said, oh yeah, I spoke to the office earlier, and the thing is, the last time that we did it, we just photoshopped that in.
Oh, and you've just wasted all that time.
A whole day. Well, I was like, well, it's your time. Yeah, you want to pay me to do that? That's sound.
Yeah.
Well, it was a case of, my gosh, you don't realise how much is like retouched, how much is edited in at the end. And you can work with some art directors who are awesome, and they will get to certain points in it, and something will want to be changed by, the creative team at the office. And the art director will just say to me, don't worry about it. We'll retouch it. We'll do this. We'll do that. No problem. We can CI it. Not an issue. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. And then I've worked for some people who they want every image to be absolutely pristine, understandable, that's what they're paying for. But if they're doing that and then they are literally saying, can you reshoot it? Can you take that couple of seeds off that area? You could do that on a computer within 2 minutes.
Yeah,
you're wasting studio time. It's not cost effective. It's a complete false economy by getting us to stay behind 2 hours to do an image again that you could retouch and have exactly as you wanted within like seconds.
Yeah, I think there's a really fine line there, and I think it's something I've learned over my career as well. Is there's a fine line between what takes you 2 minutes to do and what takes retouch 2 minutes to do, and what the
Yeah.
capabilities are of both reaching the middle point. Because there's some things like I'll be styling, say, mannequin, and the fabric's just shit. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes they've got to chop the mannequin in half and flip it, you know,
Yes.
things like that. But then it would take me 20 minutes to just get one corner of the sleeve done, and it takes them 2 seconds. So I do think there is that like understanding of what each other's job is in order to make it more efficient and cost efficient for everybody involved. So I think that is, it's
Absolutely.
quite a big thing. So sorry, I just interrupted you then. What were you going to say?
Oh no, it's all good. I was talking to my dog. Sorry.
I mean,
I apologise.
no, don't apologise. Mine's just started guffing behind me, so that's nice. Nice, you know, she's nice and relaxed now.
Oh bless.
So I'm going to ask you, how did you get into your creative industry? Because I know you had a more corporate background. So could you guide me through how you got to where you are now, basically?
Oh gosh. Okay. So when I was younger, I always assumed that I would work in a creative industry at first. I was very into, well, I was a pianist. I was really, really into my music. And I was at dance school and drama school and doing all these really wonderful creative things. You know, I loved art and all of that. I always assumed that's the way that my career would go. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I remember they had a careers advisor come into school, and I told her what I wanted to do. And she said to me, she said, you do know, if you work in a, particularly in a theatre setting, whether it's, whether you were to go into music or, you know, dance or anything like that, your career will be done by the time you're 30. And what are you going to do after you're 30? Now, I know. Now, if somebody said that to me now about when I'm 50, I'd just go, yes, sounds okay. I'll have 10
Yeah.
years out of it. Let's enjoy. But when you're 15, that's pretty fucking scary. And when you've been working really hard, to have somebody sit there and say, no, you are ruining yourself. Don't do that. So I ended up going to law school. So I did my law degree, dragged through that kicking and screaming. Oh my gosh, I got it done. And I did have a few exit points where I could have gotten out of it quite frustratingly. And I didn't, because I've always had this knack of landing on my feet when it comes to work. So even though I was only in uni, I managed to get some incredible jobs. Don't get me wrong, every law firm I've ever worked for has folded. That has nothing to do with me. I like to think that I just have a good instinct of knowing when to leave.
Yeah.
So what happened is I did have some incredible jobs. I worked in probate, and then I started working in family law, and I was working for a firm that dealt with all the personal legal matters for a Premier League football club in Merseyside. So
Wow.
I was living the dream. You know, it was good times all round, and I loved it. And then what happened was I had been engaged at a very young age, because again, when you're, 19, 20, you're all full of hope and happiness for the future, and you think everything's going to be good. And then after a while, you realise, no, it will not. And and what happened is I broke off the engagement a few months before we were planning on getting married, and I was so lost, and I had become so entrenched on just pushing forward, but I was finding it very hard. Around the same sort of time, interestingly, I was starting to have issues with my health that at the time, they couldn't find anything wrong with me in particular. That all got explained a few years later, but at that time, I was fainting a lot. I was feeling really rubbish. I could be walking down the street and I would instantly just lose all the feeling in my hands and travelling up my arms.
Shit.
And I remember what my doctor said to me one day after doing all these tests at hospital. He said, some people are just weird.
What?
Cheers. Thank you. He's still my doctor now, funnily enough, but he was like, some people are just a bit fucking weird. So, okay, dude. So what had happened is I at this time, I was taking some time off uni. I felt really awful. I didn't know what to do. And I was living in the city centre in Liverpool at the time. And I'd been to stay at my parents'. And my dad was driving me back. And he took a bit of a detour so he could chat with me. And he said to me, look, I know you're going through a lot right now. And I want you to know you can just do whatever makes you happy. And I said, well, I've started this degree and I've got to finish it. And he said, if you tell me right now that what would make you happy was busking on a piano at the end of Bold Street, I'll go and buy you a fucking piano. If you want to do that, he said, I don't fucking care what you do as long as you're happy.
Yeah.
And what that actually ended up doing was, after having that conversation with my dad, I kind of felt, well, do you know what? No, I'm going to finish off this degree for two reasons. First of all, I felt like I all of a sudden realised that I was under no pressure from family to do anything in particular. So I thought, okay, so that's kind of taken a lot off my shoulders. If I'm doing it now, I'm only doing it for me. The second reason I decided to go ahead with it is because I am incredibly motivated by spite. And when I broke up with that little fucker, I remember him saying, well, this will be it for you now. That's it. Good luck to you. Oh. And I just thought, right, okay, you bastard. I'm gonna do this. And I did, and I finished it, and I did loads of exams, and then I went to work on the respiratory disease litigation case against the government, which went on for a few years. Probably the best law firm I've ever worked at. So much fun, like lifelong friends. I say so much fun and lifelong friends. Basically, I spent about 50% of my time doing law and about 50% of my time creating dance routines with other members of staff in the basement where we kept the files. It was a very unconventional firm and it was fabulous, but we all knew that once that litigation was over with, because there was thousands of claimants, we knew once that was over that was it. We were all going to have to part ways.
Yeah.
So I was there and it was wonderful. And I then got offered a job very quickly in care law, which is the lovely, lovely business of dealing with the nice people in society, like paedophiles and people who abuse their children. I know. Oh, how lovely.
That's heavy.
I wasn't representing them, but I was for a law firm that acted for the children in those cases, because when a child, even if a child's 2 months old, if a child's getting taken into care or is being abused, they are entitled to have a representative. And that goes through an agency called CAFCAS, and there's a solicitor for that. Anyway, I did that. And then after a while, I went on to the Family Justice Council in Liverpool, and mediation was starting to come into play in the family court. It was, to be frank, it was a way of saving the court money. Mm-hmm. And what they said is, if you want to get divorced, or if you are, struggling to decide when to see the children, you must go to mediation before you go to court. And, I'm always up for a new challenge, a new job every 5 minutes. I thought, I want to be part of this. Like, this sounds brilliant. And I managed to get a placement, and I managed to train as a mediator very, very quickly, actually. I found a firm that loved me, and I went to work for them. And I thought, this is it for me. It's finally happened. This is what the school careers advisor said would happen one day. I would find my one job that I would be in forever. I was in this for 8 months, right? It was like, I started working I was working across family mediation, family law and care law. And I was working between Liverpool and Telford. So my commute it changed between, it could be 20 minutes one day, I could be working from home, or I could be driving 2 hours down the road. Yeah. It was bonkers. Around this sort of time, I was exhausted, but I was doing so much. And there was a lot of things happened in my personal life. We had a few deaths in the family, and they happened in quite a quick succession.
Mhm.
So much so that I later found out that the senior partners at the firm I worked at actually thought I was making a lot of it up, because they didn't believe that you could have that many things happen to one family
Jeez.
in that short a period of time.
Yeah.
What was happening is I was working, and I had all this shit going on, all this loss.
Mm.
And I'll be honest with you, at the time, you wouldn't have known that, because you would have thought I was living my best life. The way I was getting around it is I was just going out every weekend. I just didn't, well, not even just the weekends. I was out all
Yeah.
the fucking time. Because what was happening is I was dealing with the absolute garbage of society during the day. And I mean, in the sense of the care cases, right?
Yeah.
I was dealing with this absolute horrible stuff in the day. And then at night time, I was coming home to a house where, I live alone, but I live by my family, or my family members. We all live in the same area.
Yeah.
And we were going through loss after loss. And it wasn't just, I'm not minimizing any loss, because a bereavement is always tragic, but we're talking suicide and things. And it was just like, geez. So I remember I was going out loads, and I used to go to this rock night on a Wednesday night at the Academy in Liverpool called Revs. And that used to be until 2. And then at 2, all the cool kids used to go to this other place called Aftermath. And it was like this underground bar. And that'd be open till 6 a.m. And I would stay there till 6 a.m. and go home and get changed and go to work. And
Jesus.
I know. And here's the thing. Luckily, I actually didn't drink alcohol back then. So it wasn't like I was turning up pissed, or I was, struggling to drive to work. But, I remember it being about 5:30 in the morning, one of the nights I was there, 5:30, and I'm sitting in the corner of this seedy club, eating a Calippo, watching these two guys dancing to ska music. It was a ska version of Take On Me from a-ha. And I remember just sitting there thinking, this is fucking great. Like, this is how I didn't think my life would turn out like this. But you know what? I'm fucking rolling with it. And like, I look back now and I think I clearly had some shit going on. To think that was the pinnacle. That was great. And I would do these things, and I was still turning up, and I was still doing my job, and I was doing my job well, because, like I say, even though I was out a lot, I didn't drink. I wasn't into anything silly. I was just somebody who liked to go out and enjoy myself and forget what was going on. And even on the nights that I couldn't go out, I used to, because I couldn't sleep, and because, I would get into my car, and the Gaslight Anthem had just brought out an album called The 59 Sound. And I put it in, and I would drive my car down the coastal road to Southport. And I'd get up there and just bawl my eyes out. So by the time I got there, it'd be like midnight. And then I would drive back. And by the time I got home, the album would have just finished, and I'd go to bed. Yeah. And that was my life for ages. So then what happened is it got to a point where this had been going on for a while, and I was getting increasingly exhausted. I was forgetting a lot of things. And at the time, to be perfectly frank, I thought I was having some sort of breakdown, because with everything that was going on and the way I was living my life, I assumed that maybe that was it for me. And to be honest, again, at the time, I just thought, well, do you know what? Heading towards my late 20s, it's probably time that I had a good old-fashioned breakdown. I just fall apart, ready for the next section of my life. I was weirdly accepting of it. I thought, this is it for me now. I'm fucking losing my mind. This is great. I'm going to go out again and buy some Calippos. Anyway, so what had happened is I reached a point where I got up one day and I just realised I could not drive to Telford. I knew that if I got behind the wheel of the car, it would have been exceptionally dangerous for me to drive to Telford. I felt exhausted and I felt disorientated. So I spoke to my doctor, told him what had happened. And again, it was assumed that it was stress. Because, if somebody comes in and says to you, oh, well, I'm feeling this, and this has just happened in my family, it, naturally, they're going to think it's something to do with the high pressure job and the commutes and the going out all the time. And again, this is the doctor who diagnosed my earlier thing as being a bit weird. So he's just like, I'm just going to sign you off, baby. Go on home, 3 months, indulge yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I got signed off and I let work know. And I thought everything was fine. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an email and they said, there are some files that we can't find and they're your files. And, we need this information. Now, I back everything up. So I said, yeah, got back up. Here you go. Sent it over. So then another week passes and I get this email from, I can name him now because my NDA's expired. So I got an email from one of the lead partners, and he said to me, we're very concerned because you signed off. You're not answering any of our calls, which is the whole point of being signed off.
But
You're not meant to be in touch with work. You're not answering any of our calls. And we've noticed there's a lot of holes in your work. Like, no, my friend. Wait there 1 second. I may not be well, but I'm fucking diligent when it comes to, don't you dare. Like, I am obsessive when it comes to that sort of thing. I can even name file reference numbers now from, 2008 that I've worked on. Like, I am crazy obsessed when it comes to that sort of thing. And he said, I think maybe we should, start having some chats about your future. And I thought, I know what you're fucking saying. You don't want to pay me sick pay for 3 months. You're annoyed that I'm the only one who wouldn't relocate to Telford. I knew. But I thought, you know what? I don't really want to go back anyway. Because having that time away, realised that I did work with a shower of bastards. And I thought, I think I'd like to do something a bit different. And I knew I'd always been good at baking. So while I was off and I was unwell, I started baking and I started doing a few bits and I did the costings on it, realised that the model I wanted to do it in wouldn't really work financially. But I just sat there and it kind of, kept my brain going while I was off. And then what happened is one day, a week before I was due to go back to work, I went onto the remote server to have a look at my emails and see what was going on. And I had the laptop open in front of me on the table. And as I was sitting there, the little cursor on the screen starts to move on its own. And I was like, what the fuck? And then a file opens on my screen. So at this point, I grabbed my phone and I started filming it. And this file opens and stuff starts getting deleted. And then a little box comes up and it says log out, and it had the name of the partner's assistant.
Fuck!
So I finished filming it and I just sat there and I thought, what the fuck am I going to do with this then? I've seen Tom Hanks in Philadelphia. I know how this shit goes down. So I was like, oh my God. So next day I got an email from Carl. Fuck you, Carl. And he messaged me and he said, I think we need to have a meeting because we're very concerned about work you say that you've done, that you haven't done. And you know what that bastard made me do? He said that he wanted to meet me at a hotel and it was a 2-hour drive from my house. It wasn't even like near the office. It was the opposite direction. It was just one of these things. Everything had to be made difficult.
Yeah. Nothing
could be done rationally and reasonably. Everything had to be made hard. And at this point, I'm still feeling fucking awful. But I thought, no, I'm fired up here. I'm going to go see what this dude has to say. And I went there and I sat down and he goes into this long spiel about my work. Oh, you were brilliant when you started here, but over this summer, since this stuff's been going on at home, you've not been the same, and now you're signed off, and he's going on and on. And now these files are missing, and we've got legal aid contracts that we have to answer for, and you've got missing files, and he's going on like that. I said, okay, so before we go into this, I just need to show you something really important. And I got my phone out, put the video on, turned it to him, and he watched the video. And then he placed my phone down on the table and he said, what do you want? Yeah. And I said, well, because at this point, I'm not fucking stupid. I'd already seen an employment solicitor.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to need, I can't remember what the first thing was. You never get your first offer, but I think we asked for like 2 years' wages and all that bollocks. And I got what I wanted in the end.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of negotiating, but I got it. So the plan was, the minute I finished was, right, okay, that's it. I'm going to go into baking. That's the direction I'm going to go in. I'm going to do what makes me happy now. And it was like, yeah, everything's coming together. I've left that awful career. I've left that awful way of life. And I'm going to do something different. And then about 2 weeks later, I woke up one morning and I couldn't actually physically lift my head off my pillow. And I thought, oh, that's a bit odd. And I messaged one of my friends and she sent back, she said, you know what that is? You've got meningitis. I was like, oh, fuck off. I don't need to hear this. I'm laughing at her, right? But I thought, this isn't right. So I went to the doctors and the doctor said, we feel you've got septicemia, you need to go to hospital. So I went to hospital, and let me tell you, septicemia sends you absolutely crackers. It can make you really paranoid. I was convinced it was all this big conspiracy. It was absolutely bonkers. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, you bastards. I was in hospital, I had loads of tests done, and then I was, I said, look, I have a dog at home and I live alone. And what am I going to do about my dog? And the nurse said, well, if there's nowhere for him to stay, don't worry, we'll get the RSPCA to go down and pick him up. And I immediately, that was just like, no, absolutely not. There is no fucking way someone's going to go and take my dog out of my house. Obviously, she meant in the kindest possible way, but, in my septicemia-riddled mind, I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to kidnap my dog and sell him on the internet. And it just totally, so I was adamant, I have to go home. And I went home that night after I had all these tests done, feeling absolutely awful. And the next day I woke up, and I didn't wake up till about 2 p.m. And I had about 18 missed calls on my phone from the hospital and the GP surgery. And I called up and they were like, you are very, very ill. And you've got to come back to hospital immediately. Like, you are very poorly. So I don't know. I know the system's changed in how they score up your blood now. But around that time, a healthy blood count for a female, I think, was between sort of like 10 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
And my blood count was just under 3.
Oh, fuck.
So, yeah, so I was really fucking ill, like to the point that when I got to hospital and I was saying again, I want to go home, they said, look, you are so ill, we could technically section you because your septicemia is so bad, you're not making rational decisions.
Whoa.
So that's how ill I was. And I was like, fuck. So I'm in hospital. Septicemia is a funny thing, by the way. Send you a bit crackers. I went through and I emailed everyone I didn't like with the email title was reasons why I think you're a twat. And I listed every reason why I thought each one was a twat. And I just sat in bed in hospital because I thought, you know what? Fuck it. That's it. You're all getting it now. And I was a terror. I mean, it was actually, on hindsight, like, some of them I do feel a bit bad about because I get a few messages back with what's brought this on, why you're in touch with me.
Yeah.
But at the time, I regretted nothing. I was sitting there going on one. And then what happened is, so short version of a very long story, it turned out that my bone marrow was quite underproductive.
Yeah.
And I also have a spleen that goes into overdrive every now and again.
Okay.
I was off for a while. There was talk that I might need a bone marrow transplant. I was off. I was sleeping about 16 hours a day. And at the time, it was in 2010, and we had that really, really heavy snow over winter. And I don't remember much of that time at all because I was tired. I could barely get up the stairs without getting out of breath. I was so exhausted. I was snowed in every day. Like, I just remember little snippets. Like, I remember waking up one morning and I could hear this scraping noise, and I looked out of my window and there was an elderly neighbour of mine shoveling my path.
Oh,
And I hadn't been out the house in like weeks, and I just looked out and thought, oh God, that's a bit mad. Went back to sleep.
yeah.
And you know what? I cracked on. I changed a lot of my lifestyle, had a lot of medication. And by spring, I wasn't fully better. It took me years to get fully better, but I wasn't fully better. And I thought, do you know what? This is it now. There's no more sitting around. I'm doing everything full throttle. There's no fucking around anymore. Like my dad said to me when I was 20 years old, you need to be doing what makes you happy. And I'd spent years doing what I thought was the quote right thing. But right thing
Yeah.
for who? Who was benefiting from it?
Yeah.
You know? And I looked at it and I thought, God, I've spent my life doing this and always trying to appease other people. And then yes, I'd say it was by April, May, I was ready to open the premises. I moved into a shared premises at first in like one of these buildings that had like a wedding dress shop, a photographer, a
Oh,
jeweler,
yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
And I just started there with a very, very lovely lady who owned the business. She helped me along the way. And within a few months, needed a premises, got the first shop. And I literally, at this point, this was do or die. I have been off for so long, and I just go full throttle and fucking
Yeah.
everything, right? I was just like, this has got to work, or I can't pay my bills.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no option. This can't fail. But at that point, I think it's once you reach a point where you are that ill, where you are not entirely sure what's going to go on and you are too exhausted to even worry about it,
Yeah.
you completely run out of fucks to give.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had friends say to me, very well meaning friends, who would say, why would you want to leave law to do that? Why would you do that? And I'd say, well, why the fuck would I want to stay in law? I was miserable doing that full time. And then, well, what if you run out of money? Well, I'll just get a job.
Yeah.
Well, what if you can't pay your mortgage? I'll sell the fucking house.
Yeah.
Well, what if you, and it was just, it kind of everything, all the things that you're told you're meant to do. You're meant to get a job, buy a house, get married, have children, all that bollocks. I thought, oh my God, why do I have to do any of those things? Because do you know what? In 2-3 generations' time, no one's going to remember me unless I do something terrible. There is still time. But no one is going to remember what I did. And you know what? Like, I remember one friend said to me, she's not a friend anymore, but she said, you have all that status with law. And I said, yeah, but what does that get me? Everyone I date's a fucking dickhead. It doesn't get me any further with anything I want to do in my life, other than when I bump into people I went to school with, they go, oh, you've done all right. Like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, that happens maybe once every year or so. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point in that? So what happens is, open this shop, beautiful premises in Southport, absolutely thrilled with it. It was this, it used to have been a double fronted shop, and it had been split into two. And it had like a false suspended ceiling in and plasterboard running down the middle. And what I hadn't realised when I moved in is that my next door neighbour had a habit of the Colombian variety. So she was a hairdresser, right? And it was horrible because we only had these plasterboard walls.
Yeah.
And what had happened is went particularly on a Wednesday morning, a Friday morning, and a Saturday morning. That was when she was having her worst come downs. And she would be smashing stuff up. She would be, it was terrible, and I'd have customers in for weddings. There was a wedding dress shop opposite, so there was a lot of people who would go there. They would come straight to me,
Yeah.
and you would have people come in, and all you'd hear next door is screaming and shouting and smashing. And I'll just refer to it as the hairdresser from now
Yeah.
on. She had this boyfriend who even to this day I still see him out and about. We call him the Count because he looks like the Count from Sesame Street. Yeah, right. So what had happened is the Count was an absolute enabler. Right, he wasn't violent like her, but this dude was an enabler. And she used to do all sort of crazy things. Like she had do you remember those pedicure fish?
Oh
She
yeah.
had
Look.
those, and she used to post the dead fish through our letterbox
What?
and to all the letter. Yeah, and she used to do all sorts of crazy shit. Right, she was nuts. And I spoke to the landlord. They were like, "There's nothing we can do about it." Um, and then what happened is things when I stopped speaking to her because I said, "Look, I can't be having this happening." I had a client in once, and as I was doing a wedding appointment, the hairdresser outside punched one of her clients in the face. So we were having police out a lot. All this stuff was going on. It was absolutely bonkers. And then it reached a hilt one day when I was quietly working away in the shop and a fucking riot van pulls up outside and all
Oh.
these police jump out and three of them burst into my shop and one of them goes, "Are you Debbie Donnelly?" "Yes, I am." And he goes, "We've had a call. You've put the window through of the salon next door." Now, to be honest, I shit myself because the hairdresser was that nuts. She's the type of woman who put through her own window. She'd done it before. So I thought, shit, I go out there and the window's fully intact. So I thought, oh my God. And even they're looking at me like, what's going on? And I said, this is what I'm putting up with. Like, I got in touch with the local MP, got in touch with everyone I could think of. No one would help me. So what happened is the next day, I know someone who I'll just refer to her as old friend
Yeah.
because she has a very respectable job now.
Yeah.
She's very good at what she does. She has a very sketchy past, right? So that weekend, I get into work on the Saturday and I know there's going to be murder next door because there always is on a Saturday morning. Something always goes on. And I message old friend and I said, "Look, I'm really worried here. There's been an incident this week where next door's called the police out and she's there. She was fighting with the counts while I was on the phone. She's screaming and he's going, and all that bollocks. And it's just like, and I said to old friends, like, it was wrong of me to do it. It's not something I do now, but I mainly did it because I know that old friend, she's on the edge. She's she's the type of person you need in a tight situation.
Yeah.
So what happens is she turns up at my shop and it's all going off next door again, all going off next door. So she goes and she knocks on next door and she gets the count outside and she goes, "I don't want to speak to your missus because it's not going to end well if I do.
Yeah.
This behaviour has to stop." Because at this point, by the way, like I know I'm laughing and joking about this situation, but this was the one time where I was thinking, oh shit, what am I going to do? I'm in a lease here and I've got this going on next door. So what happens is she's speaking to the count and the count's trying to be the big man and he's going, "Oh, but no, it's not her fault. She gets the old one that people always use. It's her nerves. It's not her nerves. It's the cocaine, dickhead."
Yeah.
So anyway, what happens is next thing, old friend gets her phone out in front of the count and she looks at me through the window. So I'm like, fuck. So I go out and old friend's on the phone and she's going, "Yeah, it's this address." She's reading out the address. She's reading out the salon name. And I'm thinking, what have I done? This is not good. So I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do here? She's on the phone and she's saying, yes, they need sorting out. Yeah. She's going to them. It's for Dono, so it needs sorting. And I'm thinking, who are these people and how do they know who I am? Absolutely like panicking. And she's on the phone and she goes to the count. "You've got 15 minutes to get out." She said, "or this will not end well for you." So she comes back into my cake shop and I'm like, "What have you?" Like, I said, "I have one thing I've done is I've been above the law the whole time here." I said, "I'm really scared." She went, "You don't need to worry about it. It's all under control." So I'm like panicking at this point and I'm saying to her, "Look, I don't want any bother. I don't want any fighting." So anyway, 10 minutes later, two massive let me tell you, by the way, this story is not going to go where you think it's going. These two massive, big, black Mitsubishi Warriors pull up outside, and they are full of these massive fellas. And I mean, like, fucking Man Mountain behind the steering wheel.
Fucking hell.
And the next thing, the count comes bursting into our shop. You've got to call this off. You've got to call this off. And Old's friend just sat there, and she went, why should I? He said, we're going to shut the salon now and go home. He said, and I'm going to make sure she never, ever bothers you again. And Old friend says, well, you know, you better, because if you don't, this is not going to end well for you. And in the meantime, I'm looking out, and one of the guys is like staring over at the two shops, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, I've been really good. I've not done anything wrong. I've played all the rules. So anyway, next thing, he goes back in the salon, door gets locked. They leave and hot-foot it out the back door, down the back entry, and they've gone. So I look over, and these fellas are now getting out of these cars, and they're absolutely massive. And I said to Old friend, I said, who are they? She went, I don't fucking know. And I said, well, I said, did you phone them? She went, no. I said, who did you phone? She went, no one. I was just pretending. I said, who are they? There was a fucking bodybuilding convention on at the convention centre at the top of our road, right? So what was happening is all these absolute juice heads were using the parking outside our shop. An Old friend just absolutely dialed it out to make it look like she put this, and you know what? Never had a problem after that day.
Oh, holy shit.
And it was like, honestly, at the time, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to end up in war. And yeah, hairdresser and the count, they go running off down the back alleyways of Southport. And these fellas just get out, you know, absolute bright orange because they're about to compete, and they just stroll off up the road to the convention centre. I was like, I can't fucking believe this. And then, fortunately, because the business did so well, we then moved to a larger premises. We expanded into the shop onto the other side of us, so it only got bigger. And then another shop came up across town, so we bought that out. So we moved the business into there, and it just kept on growing. There was no more drama. There was no more bodybuilding interventions with. Oh my God, it was just crazy, and it started to, you know. I was really happy with how things were going, but I started to get, you know, that little itch you start to get where you're thinking, "Ooh, I just fancy doing something else. Like, I want to do a bit more." So what happened was I knew that how I like to cook and how I like to bake at home was very different to what I do at Vanilla Nova, because Vanilla Nova is primarily a wedding cake shop. So that's more like sugarcraft. It's very artistic. There's a lot to it, which I would not do at home. My style at home was completely different. So what happened was I thought to myself, you know, I think I'd like to start writing some of the recipes that I just make anyway, and I'd like to photograph them, and I'd like to see what happens. So I took some pictures of a few recipes, and I wrote up this really lovely letter, and I thought, I'm going to send this to Booths. Booths, the supermarket chain.
No.
There's one not far from me. I genuinely shop there, and I just thought this fits. Like, if I'm going to pitch for anything, because I don't really like pitching for myself, I'd rather, I can pitch for other people, but for me, I'm not that great at it. And I just thought, I'm only going to pitch for the things that I really want to do, and only for people that I actually want to work with. Now, I totally appreciate, by the way, that that's a very privileged position. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's, oh yeah, only work with the people that you like. Because if that was the case, there'd be a lot of people with no one to work with. But, you know, I just thought, because I had the shop, so I had a residual income. I had a business that was making money. I thought, I want to only if I'm going to put myself out there, I only want to put myself out there to people that I actually admire, respect, or where I think their values fit in with mine. And Booths is a family-owned business still. It has been for over 100 years, 175 years this year, I think it is.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been going an awful long time. And I thought I'd love to work with them. So I was traveling to Paris the next day, and I thought I'll send it just before I go. Went to print it off, and the printer was broken. So I thought, am I going to look like a psychopath if I handwrite it? Yeah, I'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
So I wrote it down, threw some photos in of stuff that I'd made, and I sent it to them. Got on the plane the next day, and to be honest, the minute I sent it off, I thought, you moron. Like, how unprofessional is that? A handwritten letter with a few Polaroids in the back. How 1975 is that? And I sent it in, and by the time I got back from Paris, I had this email from Booths, and they said, we love people who work in the way that you say you want to work. We only want to be kind of, putting our time and effort into people who have the values that we have, which is exactly what, I had thought when I pitched out to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see them, and within like 2 weeks, I had an agreement to write a recipe a week for Booths.
Wow.
Then after that, things really did snowball very, very quickly. So within about a month of that, I thought, okay, I'm feeling a bit ballsy now. I thought, I've just done that. If there's something that's similar in demographic to Booths, it's Lancashire Life. Yeah. So I contacted Lancashire Life magazine, similar sort of scenario, and they got in touch like a week later. Yeah, would you like a monthly column? I've been doing that since. I say it's a monthly column. It's 3 pages long.
Wow.
Ramblings of a mad woman. Right? It's just 3 pages of me with recipes and whatnot. But the thing was again, I got in touch and I said, look, I feel the type of audience you have shop at the place that I am writing for. So I kind of then started to say to myself, this is what I mean. I thought, I only want to be working with people where it genuinely fits, because when it's like that, I can do a really beautiful job for them.
Yeah.
And I learned that very, very quickly. So because I was doing the recipes for Booths, after a short while, they said, well, do you want to come and do some styling for us? Do you want to come and write some recipes where we shoot them in our studio? I thought that'd be great. And it was the first time I'd worked in a big commercial studio. And I don't know if you've worked at Blink before in Chorley, but I was sent there, and I was working with a photographer called Stephen, who, oh my gosh, is just the nicest man. He is just so lovely, and he was incredibly helpful. If anything, it was probably a bad thing that I worked with Stephen at first, because I expected every photographer to be like him, and I was very, very wrong. So like from day one, I would say to Stephen, because at the time, by the way, I was only photographing food on my phone. I wasn't even editing it. I was literally just like, boom, there you go. And I got there, and Stephen was like, well, no, this is the lens I use. This is how I do it, and all of that. Some photographers at other studios, it's like signing the fucking Official Secrets Act.
Yeah.
They don't want, I have literally said, oh, what are you using? Oh, I'd rather you didn't see.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you think I'm doing with this information? Like, seriously, who do you think cares? Come on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I worked with Stephen, and he taught me so much about photography. And because Booths was so trusting with me, and I sound like I'm advertising them here, but I'm being totally sincere. Booths and Lancashire Life have done more for my career than any other outlet that I have worked with. And that's not to put anybody else down. But what I'm saying is that when you go and you work with people where they are very sort of family orientated, when they have quite, I don't know whether it's a northern thing, but when it's, and they put so much trust and faith in me, and that enabled me to learn so much. So all of my food photography, I learned on the job. I have never gone and done a course in it. I just learned it from all these lovely people, like the guys at Blink. I mean, oh my gosh, I remember the first time I was there, and sometimes when I joke, people don't get that I'm joking. And Stephen said to me, he said, because you're new in today, you can choose the music. What would you like? So joking about, I said, do you know what, Stephen? I said, I'm really in the mood for some German industrialist metal. Put it on, didn't he? Right? And then it kind of became a thing. So it was like, it became this constant joke. So every day I was in, he'd say, what do you fancy? And I go, you know what, Stephen? I'm not feeling very yeehaw today. So if we could have some late 19th century saloon music, that would really help. And he fucking finds a playlist. And then we both realised quite quickly that we both loved Vietnam War era rock music, right? You had so many good bands then. Oh my God. You had Mountain, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Guess Who, the Stones, and then you then go on to Hendrix, all of that, like all these amazing artists. And it was, when you're in that zone, when you're working with people who are so fucking good at what they do, you've got this amazing music on, you're just having a really good time. The learning curve is off the scale. And the stuff I was learning, and I was coming home and I was thinking, oh my God, this is what I want to do. This is amazing. What I didn't realize was I was thinking that when I was working at that studio. So then what had happened is I have been approached by an agent, and she was like, oh yeah, come sign up with us. And it was a bit of a finicky one. And there's no ill will at all about this. I was signed up with an agency on more of like a sort of writing sort of talent basis. Mm-hmm. And then they said, oh, well, because you've done, styling stuff with Boots and commercial stuff with them, would you like to do it with other clients? And I said, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. And you know how it is. If you've got a regular job coming in and it's really good money, the other things kind of get pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. It's kind of, you think to yourself, well, nice little payday this. I should just, keep them happy. And I did. I kind of fell into doing a lot of studio work for bigger brands, bigger names. And I found out very quickly that I kind of, like the stuff we discussed before, it was so incredibly finicky. And I get that because it's multi-million-dollar business worldwide. It's, these people, it doesn't matter where your client is. They could be 5 minutes down the road. They could be in another country. They're putting a lot of money into that studio time and they want it to be precise.
Yeah.
And as we said, a lot of people want to have a part or a say in it. And I'd be working at some studios that were like a conveyor belt. It was, right, guys, we've got 6 products. We've got to get this photographed today. It's got to look perfect. And they will have an art director on set who is very involved. And you feel very watched, but you get on with it and you get it done. But like the enjoyment kind of wasn't there for me.
Yeah.
And then you'd work in some studios like the one that you and I worked in. I won't name it, but the one we've worked in together.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun because it's full of really lovely people.
Yeah.
But again, it's still a very sort of precise way of working and it's very exact. And I just kind of found, particularly when the pandemic hit, so I had to step away from that particular studio because my immune system issues were quite bad. To be honest, it'd be too much of a liability signing me up for a job. I mean, as you know, back then it was, you've got to get in early, you've got to do a test, there has to be a backup person in case your PCR test comes back saying you've got COVID. Totally understandable, because if someone brings COVID in, you've shut down the operation.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But it just kind of made me realise that it kind of took me out of that studio environment. So I went after a lot of jobs just as me on my own. And now, my gosh, I've got so many clients. Like, I'm shooting for a big worldwide brand this week and I'm shooting it in my kitchen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I realised, because I've got this quite a wide skill set, I was able to take on more unusual jobs. So, like, I got a call from the Liverpool Philharmonic, and they said, "Can you make the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall out of gingerbread?" Yeah,
Amazing.
fine, no
Amazing.
problem. And it meant that because I have worked in so many different areas, I can go after a really wide variety of jobs, which in some ways is great because it means I can, do a lot of different things. But in other ways, it can be, I don't get overwhelmed by it, but I think every now and again I'll sit there and I'll think, fucking hell, I've got to get on a plane to St. Lucia this Thursday. And then when I get back on Monday, I've then got to make 600 cookies for this. And then I've got to go and write this recipe and do this. And it's wonderful. It's a great way of working. But sometimes you sit there and you think, geez, how am I even going to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like it's not, like you say, it's almost like it's not overwhelming, but you're almost like, oh, fucking hell, I need a rocket up my arse now. I've got to get this done.
And especially because one thing I did miss out then is just before the pandemic, I went to work for House of Cocoa magazine, where I was food editor for a few years. I left in January of this year because I'm just focusing on my own projects now. But I went to work for them, and I did an awful lot of travel.
Yeah.
Awful lot of travel, as you know. Even during the pandemic, as soon as restrictions were lifted, I was being sent off to different places. And, every trip that I went on, like, something has always gone wrong. It's never straightforward. And you know what? It makes bloody good writing. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, it's always an interesting article. I have been to, I remember going to Toulouse, and like I say, I got tear gassed. I was like, oh, fucking great, because they love a riot in France, don't
The
they?
French.
More power to them.
Yeah.
But I was only trying to get to Lush to buy a bath bomb. and I got tear gassed. And you know what, right? I was running back to the hotel because it's, oh my God, the pain is so awful.
Yeah.
And I was running back to the hotel, and this guy, he's dressed like all in white. It wasn't like I was, seeing the light or whatever. It was like a hazmat type thing.
Yeah.
And he stops me and he puts his hands in front of me and he goes, no. And he lifts up this spray and he motions like, do you want me to spray your face? Right?
Yeah.
Because I've been tear gassed. He's got this stuff. And you know what? I actually remember for a split second thinking, it took me 25 minutes to do my makeup this morning. And now this guy wants to waterboard me in the middle of fucking Toulouse. So I let him spray me in the face, went back to the hotel, and we actually got barricaded in the hotel because the riots were that bad. Spent the rest of the trip there. Yeah, and then when I was flying home, I had to switch plane to Amsterdam. And as we were there, somebody tried to hijack a plane, and the military turned up, and everything got locked down. It was absolute chaos, and everyone's running around screaming. And I just sat there and I thought, makes sense now. This is that now. Everything makes sense. This happened. I knew this had gone too fucking smoothly. I knew it had gone too well. Of course, someone's tried to hijack a plane. Of course, that makes perfect fucking sense. Because you know what? I had the nerve to have a nice time. How dare I? But no, I did that for a while. I was away about 12 times last year. I've had some incredible adventures, and I've got to meet some incredible voices in food. I have got to meet people who cook at home, and they open up their home to people to go in and, dine with them and listen to their stories. And you get a completely different side of the country that you're in when you're sitting with a local rather than a tourism board representative.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of that. I have met some incredible chefs. I have tried some unbelievable food. I have cooked along with some wonderful chefs. I have got very drunk with some wonderful chefs, which resulted in me trying to rip a fake door off a wall in a castle, but that's another story for another time. Thought it was my bedroom. And do you know what? I thought one of the other journalists with me, I'm a lightweight. We'd had a wine tasting. I'd only just started drinking.
Yeah.
And I was convinced when I went to my room, I saw this door. I was convinced we had adjoining rooms, right? And I got really excited because I thought, I'm going to jump in and scare the shit out of Georgie, right? So I'm messing myself up so I look all raggedy and that. And I open the door and I jump in to scare the shit out of Georgie and realise I'm in my own fucking bathroom because I wasn't in an adjoining room. I was a woman alone, quite pissed on wine, making monster noises in an empty bathroom in Germany, all alone. But
Amazing.
honestly, I have had like the most amazing adventures doing it. But it got to sort of late last year. I wrote my first book called Tart. And that was quite the experience because I had full creative control over it, which was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And I got that finished, and I only realised at the end of that how much that took out of me creatively. And I thought, I cannot commit to the level that I would like to commit to some of my roles. And I've got to start. I'm very good at knowing when to quit stuff. I don't hold on to things. So, like I did with law, like I do with basically anything in my life that isn't doing me any good anymore, I just get rid of it. And I thought, okay, I've got commitments here that are causing me a lot of stress because I simply don't have the time to do the type of job that I'd like to do. If I'm not going to do, I'm not going to half-arse anything, you know. I'd rather just do a good job of whatever it is I'm required to do. So I sadly did say goodbye to House of Cocoa, but I'm still freelancing. So even though I've left House of Cocoa, I'm still doing the same amount of press trips. So it's a bit counterintuitive. It's like I'm leaving and then people get in touch. Oh, do you want to go to Malta? Oh, okay. So, I can be tempted. So I've still been doing stuff, but I'm freelancing for the wardrobe now. So I stopped doing that, and I also stopped doing as much recipe writing work. I'm still doing it, but what I'm saying is I started to cut back on things because I realised, for one, the country's not doing great right now, and I'm stockpiling jobs. I've got like 45 positions that I'm doing, and there's a lot of people need work. But in all seriousness, though, when I wrote my book last year, it was hard. And I knew what I was doing. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted it to look. And I was happy with that, but it was difficult, and it was a long and stressful process, and it was late coming out. And then when it came out, the first lot of it sold out too quickly, and then it was just crackers.
Yeah.
Like, it's done really well, and I'm glad that I did it, but it's just a blur to me. It was, and then you're doing that. And the issue is, you see, when you'll know this as freelancer, when you are doing so many different projects, it can be very difficult to prioritize the workload, particularly because you will naturally gravitate towards the stuff that you enjoy most. So what would happen is I would want to spend all this time on the book, and then I would get like an email from one of my editors with, oh, this deadline's tomorrow. And then I'd get a call from a brand that I work with. Oh, can you just photograph XYZ? Can you have it done by this week? And then all of a sudden you're spinning all these different plates, and you think you're doing okay, but I was doing okay, but by Christmas last year, I was completely burnt out. And I realised that if I'm going to do a second book, which I'm really excited about, really, really excited about the second one, I'm not going to say too much about it, but it's food-based, bit edgier than my other stuff. Really excited about it. Yeah, bit sultry, a bit nice. But it's absolutely cracking, and I'm really excited about it. But I came to finally admit to myself around Christmas that I cannot give my all to lots of things at once. I need to just give my all to one thing and do the smaller jobs in between. I know I'm very lucky. Like I say, I have a business that looks after me. So I can kind of pick and choose the projects that I do. When you write a book, the time you wait to get paid, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is, and I work best when you keep me hungry. If you say to me, Debs, you've got to get this done in 1 month and you've got £10 to live off until then, and if it's not done in that time, you're going to die, right? I will get that done, no problem. If you say to me, Deb, here's 10 grand, get that book in for us in 2 years' time, 2 weeks before that deadline, I will start that book. Honestly, you've got to keep me against the wall to get anything done. I can't just do it. Like, I can self-motivate, but what I'm saying is that if there's no pressure there, I ain't touching it. I'm going out with my dogs. I'm not even going to look at it. So I kind of don't want to be under that pressure again this year. So I have let go of a lot of things. And it's, the power of letting go and knowing when to walk away from stuff. As I say, in a generation where we're told that you pick a job, you do it, you stick to it. If you don't stick to your job, you don't stick to your marriage, you don't stick to your hobby, you failed. You haven't fucking failed anything. Because who's going to come and arrest you if you decide you're not going to play netball anymore?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, when I quit netball when I was 15, I thought someone would. I was like, geez, the hassle and the stuff that I was told. And we have been brought up in such a way where, and particularly if you've worked in corporate as well, we have been brought up in such a way that we're made to feel that there's a certain order to things. And I think particularly with the pandemic, a lot of people now are realizing that there actually is no fucking order. Time is just a construct. I'm going full Mariah Carey. I'm not even acknowledging time and my age anymore. That is it. It's all over. I have no concept of what day it is, of how old I am, or what is happening. But the thing is, and it's wonderful, by the way, and I think particularly for younger people who are coming into the creative industries, I think it's really wonderful that this way of chopping and changing between jobs, if you are that way inclined and if you enjoy it, I think is fucking fantastic. Because when I was 16, if I'd have turned around and said to anybody, this is what I'm going to do, and listed all the stuff that I'd done now, I would have got smashed in the face. It would have just been like, what the fuck are you talking about, child? Because it wasn't really it wasn't deemed acceptable. Whereas now you can have all these multiple jobs and do these multiple things. And it's a bit of a headache. People say, what do you do for a living? Oh, where the fuck do I start? The list is long and extensive, my friend. But the thing is, we're at a point now where you can do those different things. Of course, it can be stressful. I remember when I first met you and I sat on top of a chest freezer in a studio, right? And we were both talking about a book which was basically about keeping your shit together. We were both like, I was like, you need to read this book. There's this book and it's probably the only thing that's stopping me from murdering someone. And you're like, oh my God, I've been reading it too. Because it can be difficult, particularly when it comes to chasing invoices. If you're not a fan of pitching, of course, it can be hard. But if you're the type of person who just wants to give something a go, I think it's fucking amazing nowadays that you can do that. You can just approach studios. There are places with excellent programs, particularly for young people wanting to get into creative media. And that's great. But if it had been like that when I was younger, not that I regret the career path that I took, student loans may argue otherwise, but not that I regret the career path that I took. It would have helped if those paths were open when I was that age. Put it that way.
Yeah. I am similar to you in the sense that I actually wanted to go into printmaking when I was 18, leaving college. And all the printmaking courses were drifted off because they were all going to digital stuff.
Yes.
And now you look at it and so many people are bringing back these printmaking things. Yes. And I'm like, why did you quit? Why was that not as seen as a career? Like, why is it not seen as a starting point for a career to then be digitized? Or, and I think also going back to your point about us being able to do kind of everything and that peer pressure of when you're younger, when you're sat in the careers office and they're going, well, you can be a doctor, you can do all this, you can do all this academic stuff. And then you forget that actually, like, a lot of our lives have an awful lot of creative people in them. In the undercurrent, they're kind of not really seen, not really focused on, because during the pandemic, we were all watching TV, we were all watching YouTube, we were all listening to music, listening to podcasts, looking at our phones for imagery. These all have creative people in. And I think it highlights the fact that it doesn't matter what you want to do. And it doesn't matter if you change your career, because we're not in 1970 anymore, where we walk into a big corporate world and we stay there till we're 75 and get our gold watch. You can do whatever you want. And I think the pandemic really highlighted for everybody that you don't need to be burnt out, stressed out. We can survive without being monetizing everything as well. That's something that I think my dad's self-employed, and he always used to say to me, well, you won't get, you'll just be a teacher if you get a fine art degree or whatever. They knew that I was creative, but it was difficult in the early noughties, late 90s, early noughties, to see where that career would go unless you had somebody in that realm in your world.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, you don't need to monetize everything. Don't get me fucking wrong. If I get sponsored on this podcast, I'll be absolutely buzzing my tits off. But at the minute, it's a good hobby for me. It's a passion project. I really enjoy doing it. And I think there is some things that can just fill your heart up from doing something joyful that you enjoy. And fuck it, if it's something that other people don't agree with or don't get, then it doesn't matter, does it? And I think I do think the pandemic's definitely made me more philosophical as well, and a bit more of my hippie side is coming out. But I think, don't need to stress about all this stuff. It might also be age, but don't need to stress about all this stuff, and letting go of stuff is so freeing. The amount of people I've let go of, the amount of expectations of other people, like traditions, which I love, that somebody said to me the other week, and traditions are just peer pressure from dead people. That just, like, releasing all of that just makes you free, makes you a bloom in whichever way you want. And I think it's really good. Like, it's just nice to be on a different path, and it's nice to be able to connect with lots of different people in the creative world, and just show the world that you don't have to follow the same life script as every other fucker.
I mean, I had a friend pop round just after Christmas, and she actually hadn't seen me since I was still working in law. Now, funnily enough, at the time, she was an accountant, and she now lives in a shed on the side of a mooring where she just, honestly, this girl's amazing. She just looks after taking in the mooring fees from the canal boats, and she lives in this like wooden cabin on this piece of land that she bought really cheaply, and that's her life. And she loves it.
Amazing.
She honestly is amazing. But she said to me, she really made it hit home. She said, I remember when you told me that you wanted to leave law. And do you know what she said? She said, you were a mess back then. I thought, how dare you? How dare you? I was keeping my shit together. Nobody could tell. She said, but what she said really resonated with me, in that she said, when I last saw you, you had all these plates spinning, and you were scared of stepping away from them. And the minute you stepped away, nothing happened. It wasn't like everything crashed down and went wrong. Nothing happened. You literally just carried on with your life. She went, and then she did the same thing. She said, well, I then left accounting. And she actually she bought a van, and got her dogs, and she, drove around the country, and she helped out with these like these communal builds where you can go to a community and you'll help maybe build a like a social environmental project, and you will get your board and your lodging sorted. And then once you finish, she moved on to another one. And she just did that around the country, building yurts, helping with different things. And now she just lives in a wooden cabin, totally off grid, at the side of the canal, living her best life. And this is a woman who was an accountant once. And she said the same thing to me. It just kind of makes you realise that once you step out of that expectation that you are either going to have children and stay at home and look after them, or you're going to have a career, whether that involves children or not. Once you step away from that and realise that you can do whatever the fuck you want, life becomes so much better. And she did the same thing that I did. And it's only when you look back on reflection, it's like, now I can look back on that time. I know that when I live opposite my parents, and my mum is glaring at me in a sinister fashion via the blinds across the road, flashing her light on and off like a serial killer. Give her a wave. So there was me getting all like insightful, and then Mrs. D comes along and ruins everything again. Oh my God, the bullshit I put up with. But the thing is, you see, once you step away from those expectations, and I know I keep coming back to that, but that is how we were raised. And I hope that that's not the case now. I would like to hope that people are a bit more free thinking in how it comes to raising their kids and what they want to do. I really hope that's the case. I hope that it's not impressed on people as much as it used to be. But particularly when, to be fair, here's us working our asses off, and you get kids making 6 million on YouTube opening fucking Kinder eggs.
Yeah.
You kind of have to look at the world's a bit of an odd place, and where people spend their money, very odd. But you don't have to. You don't have to take that traditional path, and I'm really glad I didn't take that path. I'm glad that I found another way. 10 years' time, I don't know what I'll be doing then. I'll probably be a fucking bus driver or something. Who knows? It'll be something completely different than what I've done so far. Because why do the same thing over and over? Like, life is too long to do the same thing day out, to get annoyed by the same people day in, day out. Why not just do what you fucking want?
Yeah. And like, I think my light bulb moment, similarly to you guys, was kind of, I left full-time employment and went self-employed. And then I went and got tattooed. So my freeing thing was
love it.
Starting to get tattooed and then not giving a fucking shit what anybody thought. And a little kind of like side story on this. I've got a David Brown tractor tattooed on me because it was my granddad's tractor. I love it. Right? So that's the weirdest tattoo my tattoo artist that did my sleeve has ever done. So then when we moved to Holmfirth, I realised that the David Brown factory used to be up the road. So there's a little tractor club, right? You know where I'm going with this. So I went to the little tractor club museum day this weekend just gone, and I went in, and there's lots of like older generation people in. So I'm looking a bit fucking mental in my leopard print dungarees, a bright yellow hoodie, a bright purple denim jacket, a checkerboard like bum bag slung across my chest. And I strolled in, I was having a look around, absolutely buzzing, loved it because I love tractors. Don't know much about them, but I just love them. And then I walk in and I'm like, buy myself a t-shirt because I am that girl. And I bought myself a t-shirt, and then I spoke to the guys behind the desk, the guys who are part of the club. And I went, oh, funny story. I've got like a David Brown tractor on my tattooed on my arm. So he's like, can we have a look? Like getting all excited. Then he took a picture, right? He was like, this is the best thing I've seen all year. So he took a picture of it, and he was like, I'm going to try and get you in the David Brown magazine next month, right?
Oh my God.
So then, as we're talking, these two older gentlemen, they must have been late 70s, early 80s, just look at me and start shaking their heads, and they're just going like, oh, and they weren't very far from me.
Yeah.
And I looked at the younger guy and I was just like, yeah, my granddad would be doing that in his grave now.
Oh,
But because I think they thought like, oh, you know, I've got my hand tattooed and everything, so I'm like, I'm pretty covered now.
yeah.
And it's like, I think their expectation of what a woman should look like, and I turn up in like looking a bit unhinged, shall we say? And then I get this fucking tractor tattoo out. They must have thought, should she be sectioned now? You know, is the time? Some would question that. Yes, it is time for section, but
no,
yeah,
you're
it's
one of the
really
normal ones.
Oh yeah.
No, I think
yeah.
the one. What I tend to get a lot of the time, and it was put to me brilliant at a party once. I met this guy, and he said, "Do you know what?" He said, "When you walked in, he said, I thought you looked like a Disney princess, and then you opened your mouth." But the thing is that, like, my dad swears loads, right? So I remember when he first got Facebook, he didn't realize that I wasn't his friend on Facebook. I didn't even know he had it. And then I get this message and it says, "Why haven't you liked my photos, you twat?" And it's just like, but that's just how we talk to each other. And particularly, you know, yourself in studio environments, you know, when you're on set in different places, there's a lot of colourful language. And it's just generally how we talk. And you kind of forget it sometimes. And particularly if you've been working on a project on your own for a while, and then you go out into the wild and you start talking in that way. And I think people can be a bit, oh my gosh, that's quite abrasive. And it's not meant to be abrasive. It's just, generally speaking, I just swear a lot. I used to try not to. I don't anymore. I've given up. I don't care now. It doesn't bother me anymore. I've just accepted it. But it's funny because you say about tattoos, and one thing I say all the time is that I'm very sort of adventurous. I'm always up for doing something different, always up for a new challenge, always up for doing something a bit off the wall that people wouldn't expect me to do. The one thing I've never done is get a tattoo. And in hindsight, I'm glad, because every tattoo idea I've had has been fucking terrible. Oh my God. I remember being out once, around 2001, 2002. And I saw a girl with a tribal tramp stamp on her back, and I thought it was the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen. I thought, you know what? I'd love a bit of that. And there was like other times when I've had these ideas and I've thought, yeah, do you know what will really, really, really elevate my look? An inspirational quote on my shoulder. And luckily, I have never done any of these things, right? I went to I remember going to a studio once with a friend of mine. I won't name her because she has since had this lasered. But we went in there, and I remember, like, I didn't mention it to my mum. And my family is so chilled, by the way. They're all very artistic, very laid back. Everyone's lovely. No one has ever tried to put me off anything. But I think I was only about 16 at the time. So I know that if I'd have said to my mum, I'm going to get a tattoo, she would have been a bit, ooh, have a think about it. Don't do it on impulse. Anyway, Liverpool City Centre, that little shady studio off Renshaw Street. There's a guy there, he'll tattoo anyone. You could bring in a 6-month-old baby and he will quite happily put an Everton badge on that kid's arm. And we go into this tattoo studio, and I'm looking at the wall, and I saw this tattoo, right? And it was, fucking hell, I can't believe I'm even talking about this. Right, so it's this tattoo. I can still see it now, of this bird of paradise, and it has all these beautiful coloured feathers coming off it, right? And I look at it and I thought, I want that, and I want it massive, and I want it round my leg, and this is going to be the best thing I've ever done in my life, right? And my friend said, she went, I'm going to get mine done first. So I was like, okay. And back then I still had a mobile phone, but it was so big, it might as well have had a fucking handle on it so I could drag it behind me on wheels. It was like a proper brick. And I remember I phoned and I told my dad and I said, oh, there's this tattoo and it's of a bird of paradise. And my dad's like, yeah, get it done, daughter. Like, either not listening to me and just agreeing with me, or at this point he just did not care. But he's like, yeah, great idea, Debs, go ahead. So I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, brilliant, this is great. Another great life decision for Donnelly. And I look over at my friend, and what she did is she's getting tattooed, and hers was incredibly painful. So much so I didn't get mine done, because at the time I didn't understand that different parts of your body can hurt more with tattoos.
Yes.
As I say, we were only 16. It just seemed like, one of those things when you're a teenage girl and you think, I'm so random. And you just, I'm going to do this. And my friend, she was in so much pain, but she was adamant she was going to get it finished. And this guy who's tattooing her is saying to her, well, that's the thing with tattoos, you just have to commit. And what she did is around her belly button, she had made in Liverpool in a circle, right? Now, she was in loads of pain, which is why I didn't get mine. But I'm going to be honest with you, 16-year-old me saw that and thought, that is absolutely belter that. You know what? The fellas she's going to pick up when we go out now, when the lads around ours find out that she's got that tattoo, I'm going to stand no chance.
I'm crying.
Because she is going to be the hottest property in our high school. Like, I honestly, at the time, I remember just walking out there and thinking, this is why I don't get tattoos, right? Because there have been other times in my life when I've seen tattoos and thought, yeah, and it's like, there was a guy I know, right? I used to go out with this lad. I only went out with him a few times, and he had the script, the work on it was absolutely fantastic, right? The quality was amazing. He had song lyrics on his arms, right? And I thought this was super cool. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what an amazing thing to get done. Like, I'm going to have to pick some song lyrics too and get some too, because I was about 18, and at the time, that made all the sense. Now you'd look back and be dickhead, but at the time I was like, love and devotion. I must get a matching tattoo. Anyway, so I wasn't 8. I was probably early 20s at this point, by the way. I was old enough to know better. Anyway, turns out, so the lyrics he had on his arms, they were to a Lost Prophet song. And he's in jail now, isn't he? He's a pedo.
Yeah.
And this lad I know, he had all these, and at the time I was like, that's super cool. And again, that was something I even considered. And I look back now and I think, okay, things that I have avoided tattoo-wise, and I sit there and I list all these tattoos that at the time I thought were absolutely cracking. And I look back on now and I know it was, no, absolutely not. So do you know what? I think it's fucking awesome that you've got your granddad's tractor. I think it's fucking awesome that you have got all these tattoos, because do you know what, Charlotte? At least you look at tattoos and you make sensible decisions.
Well,
to a degree.
You say sensible. So my first tattoo I had done on my ribs, right? And it must be the size of 3 credit cards,
right?
Probably. And if people know who I am, it says patience is a virtue, and I'm the least patient person there is.
Well, it's a nice reminder, isn't
it? Yeah, and I remember going in and getting it done. It was supposed to go on the inside of my arm. Changed my mind, went for my ribs, because my dad was like, oh, what happens when you're 80? Turns out that I'm not really that bothered. I'll probably have everywhere done by then. And so I'm laying on my side and I'm biting my fingers because it hurts, right? So my hand's up and over and I'm breathing nicely, and I'm like, oh, and Nath had come with me, right? And so he's watching the rugby on his phone while I'm getting tattooed.
Mm-hmm.
And about halfway through, he's like, "How are you getting on?" And I was like, I'm not enjoying this. This is horrible." And he's like, "Well, just get on with it." And I'm like, "Shut up, you." And I dropped the C bomb. And the whole tattoo shop just started laughing. And then he's like, "Well, patience is a virtue." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like, no, this needs like, I need to finish. I need to finish." And we're all stopped. My tattoo artist has stopped. Everyone was just laughing their heads off because he just stopped the whole shop. And that was the last time. No, I took him to go and get my hand done because I needed someone else to squeeze me the hand.
Yeah.
But they're the only 2 times he's ever been, I think, since to get a tattoo with me, because I thought I can't have him in the shop. It just makes me lose focus while I'm there.
Oh no.
But I've got questionable ones. But I don't have the excuse of being 16 because I started getting tattooed when I was mid-20s.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I have had some awful tattoo ideas since then. Every few years, one comes up. Every few years. And do you know what? The only thing that's probably stopping me now is, to be perfectly honest with you, since, oh my God, I'm going to sound like such a narcissist, right? Do you know, over the last, say, 6 or 7 years, with this whole stopping giving a fuck what people think about my career and all of that, I remember when I was younger, being high maintenance was kind of like an insult. So oh yeah, they're so high maintenance. The this, that, and the other, and it was something that people would say to be mean about a woman. Oh, she's high maintenance. Do you know what? I'm high maintenance now and proud as fuck about it. Like, I don't care anymore, and because I'm so high maintenance, I'm now terrified of doing anything that could be permanent. Because I've gone so shallow that I know that if something changes and I can't change it, that I will be livid. But the thing is, though, seriously, when it comes to anything, oh my, how's this for dodging a bullet, right? A few years ago, oh my God, we all get microblading done now and all that jazz, yeah? We get this really intricate work done where they do individual hair strands on your eyebrows, and it's amazing because I have blonde eyebrows, so it totally transforms my face. It's fantastic. About 2002, 2003, so I was still, late teens, early 20s, and I knew someone who went and got her eyebrows tattooed on, right? But we're talking like Christina Aguilera style, tadpole style brows. And again, I remember looking at it and thinking, this woman's an inspiration. Like, why aren't I doing this? That is possibly one of the smartest things anyone has ever done in their lives. And I remember I very nearly went and got tadpole brows tattooed on. The same goes with a few years ago. I think it's still kind of a thing now. And I know when it's done well, it's done very well. But there's a thing called lip blush, which is where it's the updated version of tattooed lip liner.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, yeah, I could get that. And yet I'm the type of girl who every time I have lipstick on, my lips are just like way too big anyway. But again, I see it and I think, it's always when it's permanent stuff, for some fucking reason, I'm just attracted to doing things that are going to ruin my life. I never look at something normal like, that's a nice colour eyeshadow, I should give it a try. I look at it and think, oh, that'll cost me £600 and permanently change my face. I will give that a go. That is the option for me. I mean, it's literally anything like that. But very, very fortunately, I have so far not done any of it yet.
I mean, if you want someone to take you and guide you to the tattoo gods, just call me. I will take you to the right place and the right people.
No, but here's the thing. You'll take me there and I will go there and I will look at the wall and I will find the worst fucking thing. I will find the one that no one's ever asked for before and I'll be standing there going to you, isn't that magnificent? How big? Should I get it on my whole thigh? Do you think I could get away with having it on my neck and having it encroach up onto my face? Like, do you know what? Here's the thing. What I'll do is I will just get my whole back, I will get a whole back piece dedicated to Jack Nicholson and his many acting roles over the last 20 years. Let's just do the whole fucking thing. Like, seriously, because at the time, let me tell you, to me, that'll be a top idea. That will be the best thing because that's the problem with me. I'm very lucky in that it's worked out very well for me in lots of work situations.
Yeah.
But outside, when it comes to my personal life, I'm generally a fuck up, and I will come up with things like that I think are amazing at the time. Luckily, I've not let it extend into any body modifications because I would end up looking like an absolute bellend. And I would have to hold you partially responsible had you gone with me. So if I were you, what I would probably do is I would cut that bit out of the podcast so there's no evidence out there that you are supportive of this tomfoolery, and I would just fucking get rid of it because, to be honest, I don't think it's something you want to be putting out into the world. Seriously, dude.
Oh. Honestly, I've got 2 dogs tattooed on me. I've got a dog. One of the dogs is smoking a pipe.
Amazing.
I've got a donut with a face on it. I've got a jellyfish. I've got a seal. I've got, lots of crazy things. So I'm kind of, what have I got on this arm actually? Oh yeah, some flowers and some other odds and sods. But like, some people say to me, "Oh, are these sentimental?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a handful that are sentimental.
Yeah.
The rest are just, good fun." Because at the end of the day, I'm, if I hit 80, I can look at them and I might be senile and I might just be like, "Oh, that looks like pretty artwork," and then, forget about my day again. Forget to put my teeth back in or something.
The thing is, you see, on a personal level, I love tattoos to look at. I think they can be incredibly hot. They are absolutely fantastic when done correctly, but I do not hold the level of rationale and responsibility required to choose a tattoo and get one. I will happily admire from afar as you're getting all of yours, and I'll be like, "Oh my God, Charlotte, they're amazing." I have offended a few people. There was a guy who I met this guy once, and he had this tattoo up his arm, and it turned out that he'd had a relative in Japan, and it was one of these traditional Japanese buildings, but it was on fire or whatever. I thought it was Nakatomi Plaza from Die Hard. So I was like, "Oh my God, I love that film." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he never told me the relevance of why it was on fire. I don't know, something like really terrible happened. But I was like, dude, like I was expecting to see like a little like figure of Alan Rickman falling off it or something. And he was just like, "No, really offended." Oh, sorry, angry dog.
You're all right.
But yeah, it's one of those things that I think on other people absolutely awesome. I think it's great that creativity can be expressed now in such an open way. I remember when I was 16, you could struggle to get jobs in places with certain tattoos, and now it's totally normal, totally mainstream, which is fantastic.
That's it, especially in our industry. People have got them on their necks, like on their hands. Like I can't remember who said to me, someone said, they call them job stoppers when you get a tattoo on your hand.
Yes.
And someone said, "Oh, is your job stopper going to cause you like not to get any work?" And I was like, "Well, actually, it gives me that unique like point of sale, because people go, oh, it's the tattooed one.
You remember
it's the tattooed style." Then people remember me. Yeah,
it's a point of reference. I used to joke. This one I didn't take the idea too far, but I used to always joke about getting baked cake across my knuckles, because I used to.
Amazing.
Imagine getting punched in the face with one of those bad boys. But seriously, it's wonderful now how I love that in the creative industries. When I was in law, and don't get me wrong, law is relaxed so much more than when I worked in that area. But I love that you can go in and you don't have to look a certain way or dress a certain way. I love that it's a lot more open than it used to be. I remember when I was in my 20s, early 20s, So we're talking, a good long time ago. And I'm fucking 40 now. How did that happen? Not acknowledging time, Mariah Carey. And my friend and I, we went down to London and we went Mac counter in Selfridges. And back then, as it is now, Mac was, it was a place where it didn't matter what you look like. If you were good at what you did, you could work for them.
Yeah.
And there was the most fabulous, impeccable drag queen working on the counter. Looked fucking, makeup was, the skill level was insane. And you've got to remember, these were different times. I know now that a lot of people are good at makeup. You get a lot of people, you see 15-year-olds with the most amazing eye makeup techniques and that. When I was that age, it was all that orange Maybelline techniques and
me too.
And Rimmel coffee shimmer lipstick and all that bollocks, and lots and lots of glitter because it's going to attract the boys. And it was, I remember going in there and my friend and I were talking and we were like, that guy, it's so awesome that he can come to work like that, because you couldn't do that in Liverpool. Now you can now, but you couldn't then. And, those sort of times, it was very different in how you could express yourself in many, many different ways. Obviously, age has something to do with it, because when you're younger, you might not have that confidence to have that creative expression or to be who you truly are.
Yeah.
But there's a guy who's a very good friend of mine, and I went right through school with him, and he is gay. And at the end of our GCSEs, we did what most schools did in that era, and we went to a nightclub with our teachers when we were 16.
Amazing.
Normal behaviour in 1999. And what had happened is there was another group of guys who, all in our year at school, and one of them said, yeah, we're going to go and batter this guy at the end of the night. And I was like, why? And he said, because he's gay. And I said, but he's your friend. He went, yeah, but he's gay. And I was like, but he's your friend.
Yeah.
But he's gay. And they fucking battered the poor lad in the car park. And yet we're all friends now. But back then, fucking bizarre behaviour. But at the time, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, knew it was wrong, but people wouldn't think to call the police or whatever, because you'd just be like, oh, well, rite of passage. And what the fuck? Like, it's so good that those things have moved on now. People, probably because of social media, which can be an absolute twat of a thing, as well as having the odd blessing. Because of social media, people are a lot more accepting. We've still got a long way to go. But I think it's great now that we can express ourselves a bit more creatively in who we are as people without... There's still some backlash. People will still have an opinion. In many cases, people have more of an opinion now.
Yeah.
But it's good that things are changing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, like, what people forget with the social media as well is you don't need to voice every single opinion on every single thing you see.
Yes.
Like, there's some things that you can just scroll past. You don't need to comment on that.
Yeah.
And but then there's also like those old twats in the middle of the street would be like, oh, their skirt's too short. They just comment on everything that they see. And I think some people bring that into the online world, and actually we don't need it. But you're right. I think like stuff has changed, and back in the day, stuff like that we all knew it was wrong, but in a way, like you say, it was accepted. But now it's so nice to see everybody's way more accepting of different people, different cultures, different ways of life. It's more of a like broadening of your own horizon, really. Well, that's how it should be seen.
I mean, I hope that continues, and I hope that I know that sometimes it can go a bit far. I know that there are some things people are getting particularly oversensitive about, but there are things that I think it's wonderful that are changing. Like, for example, when we were younger, and I even know now, you're going to have a story to tell me about this, right? When you're a teenager, you've truly become a woman, not when you wake up one day feeling more womanly, or not because your body's beginning to change. You've become a woman when some fella shouts something fucking obscene at you across the street.
Yeah.
or from a car,
Yeah.
right? That's how you know you're a woman now.
Yeah.
Some guy drives past and shouts something fucking awful at you.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that that sort of thing, it's trying to be stopped. I know, like, they're trying to bring in laws against catcalling, stuff like that. I kind of get it to a degree. I'm not going to lie to you. I do get quite flattered if I get the odd wolf whistle. However, I don't want someone shouting something fucking disgusting out of me, out of a car at me, or sending it to me to my Instagram DMs.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah. Because I'm brutally honest, I end up just giving them shit back if that ever happens to me. And I'm just like, it'll be some sort of your mum joke or something back to them. But it's definitely happened to me. And I think it's not nice that that's a rite of passage as a teenage girl, is it?
Oh, it sucks. Like,
it's absolutely fucking sucks.
Every woman you speak to, and it's difficult, because what I hate about it, and we won't go into it too much because I don't want to put a downer on it, but every woman has a horror story about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nobody gets to 20 or 15 even now, probably even younger now. No one gets to a certain age without having a really shit story to tell about an interaction with a man.
Yeah.
And it's fucking horrible, and I hate it. And I've had conversations, like, with male friends where they've said, oh, but not all fellas are like that. Like, yeah, I 100% agree. Not all fellas are like that, but that's what makes it so fucking scary.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who the ones are who are the ones who are going to do harm. It's fucking horrible.
And this is it. And you don't know exactly as well. You think you know somebody, and
oh yeah,
they could also be the person, because somebody who I went to school with, and I'm not mentioning names, but we all used to hang about in a big gang, and he got caught messaging. Bear in mind, he had a partner and a couple of kids. He got caught messaging somebody who he thought was underage. And this is somebody who we all spent, we'd be round each other's houses. There'd be like gangs of us going out on the piss, somebody who I thought was a solid mate from when I grew up. And you just don't know.
You don't.
And I think that's the sad thing of it. And like the same as you, I don't want to end our chat on a downer, but it is something that I think is changing. And I do think, especially in our industry, the way people are approaching women in our industry is changing. It is taking a little bit more time, but with powerhouses like you just not taking any shit, it's just gonna keep changing. And I think we're on the same level here, where you're similar to me in the do no harm, take no shit kind of thing. And I think that's the way we've got to be. And we've got to be stand up for ourselves and stand up for the people who are coming through after us as well, and being you need to be paid right, and you need to be doing this. And if someone asks you, if you're a model and someone asks you to get naked on set without your consent and without somebody else there, you've got to say no to these things and stand up for yourself. But
absolutely.
Also that's also life and knowledge of the industry and stuff as well. But yeah, it definitely is changing. But I'm just thankful I'm not 14, 15 anymore, because fucking hell.
I know. And what's really wonderful about it, though, to go with the positives of it, we are now, because of the way the internet has opened up the creative space, we are in a position now where we can work with clients that we could have only have dreamt of 10 years ago. We can work with people that we would never, my gosh, I remember I'd had a really, really awful couple of days. I just got a new dog, and he'd gone missing. He'd been a Bulgarian stray, and he'd gone missing. He's currently asleep next to me right now. But he'd been gone all night, and it had been absolutely awful, and I was exhausted, and I was working at Channel 4 the next day. And I remember going there and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare, because I've had no sleep. And I was working, doing food props for a TV show with Jimmy Carvin, and I really wanted to make a good impression. I was like, God,
Yeah,
this is my
yeah.
first time at Channel 4. This is a big deal. And I went there, and everyone was so fucking lovely. And I got the job done. I was tired, and there was a producer there who was like, don't worry, get naps in between. We don't need you all day. Just go and hole yourself up in the green room. And everyone was so wonderful. And I was thinking, God, I'm working with this group of really wonderful people who I could have only dreamed of getting placed with. And, I've worked with the same campaigns you've worked on, where we have done some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, we do and when you see it come on television and it comes up on the screen and you take the picture of it and you put it on your Instagram stories and go, oh, I did this, I
Yeah.
made this, I worked on
Yeah.
this. And it's awesome that we get to do all these really good things. I mean, I've got a writing shed in my back garden, and on the wall I've got boards that have been up like in stores, which have pictures with
Yeah.
my products on. Like, I've got them framed on the wall. I've been in so many magazines now that there's just too many. I've actually just stopped collecting them. It was getting ridiculous. I get sent copies of everything that, I write for, but there's tons of them. I mean,
Yeah.
tons upon tons. We're over 100 now, and it's just ace. And you look at it and you think, at the time when you're there and you're on set and you're doing that thing and you're just ready to throw a cake at the wall,
Yeah.
you're losing your fucking mind and you're thinking, this is so awful. And then it pops up on TV, or you drive past a billboard, or you go past a lorry and there's one of your images on the side. I just remember I was driving down the motorway, and it was when I'd done the gingerbread house for the Booth's Christmas book, and they
Yeah.
put it on the side of a lorry, and I didn't know. And I was driving down the motorway and I saw it and I just started screaming. I was just on my own going, ah! On the motorway. I was so happy. And, you do these things which at the time, they seem like such small jobs because
Yeah.
it feels like such a small part in such a big machine. You go to these studios and they are filming hundreds of products a week. It's crackers. And you do this stuff, and then when you come out and you're like, fucking hell, I did that.
Yeah.
And I remember the year that I worked on the ads for, when Aldi were the British Bake Off sponsors.
Yeah.
And it was with the little gingerbread people. And I did the cakes and stuff for that. And at the time, it was a great job to work on. I really enjoyed it. It was, it was long hours. It was very demanding, but an amazing team. And it actually almost went suspiciously smoothly. It got to the end of it and was like, this has gone too well. Yeah, and it didn't feel right. And then I kind of, because it went so well and so quickly, I kind of forgot about it. And then a few weeks later, the ads start popping up on telly and your phone starts pinging and people are sending you photos and going, oh my God, it's your cake. And it's this and it's really exciting. And it kind of feels so surreal.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, because these sort of jobs, let's face it, when we were younger, I didn't know the job that I do now even existed.
Yeah.
And,
Same, yeah.
and you kind of look at it and go, oh my gosh, like I'm sure you probably, when I don't know if I can name any of your clients, but you probably go into big supermarkets and you're watching TV and you're seeing the stuff that you've done. And it's, you look at it and you think, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I had that when I first started working in a studio, and I was like, Mum, look at these purses I've styled. Look at this. Look at this. And they must have been like, we're so bored of seeing this purse on a white background. And now I'm showing them stuff and I'm like, I propped for Kim Joy's cookbook actually. And I'm like, I've got the cookbook in my house. And then when my friends come, they're like, oh, is that the book? And I'm like, oh yeah, it is. Yeah. And you get all this like sense of pride and achievement. And it's so lovely to physically see it as well, to see that satisfaction that somebody's really satisfied with what you've done, how you've worked, and then you get the physical copy at the end, or you walk into a store and you're like, I did that, or you go on Instagram and you're like, I did that, I did that, I did that, and you're like, oh, I feel so proud.
It's amazing, isn't it? And when
Yeah.
you get to the end, particularly when you're in the studio, because things move at, it's like things go really quickly, but they're
Yeah.
also moving at a snail's pace at the same time. So you can spend all day working on one shot, and then
Yeah.
the next day you'll do four. And it all kind of starts to mesh together in your mind. And you kind of lose that sort of sense of the time and the effort and the love and the creativity that you put into it. And then when you have that physical thing in front of you, like if I'd go to, particularly if I've done product packaging,
Yeah.
if I've done product packaging shots, and I'll be shopping and I'll open a freezer and there's a box with a dessert on it and it's got my photo on the front, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's such a small thing because you get to the till and you're like, I want to tell the cashier that was me.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to, because that's really fucking weird. But there's this, it's amazing. And then when you think about the number of people who are doing what we do, then even, when you break it down to, product photography, the ads that you see in stores, the in-store magazines, the leaflets, the television adverts, the newspaper campaigns, all of these different things. And there's so many of us working on it. And
Yeah.
we're all putting in all these different things. And you kind of you work on these huge projects and the magnitude doesn't really hit you anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's only afterwards when you see it, like I said, when I saw that lorry and just started screaming down the M62, like so happy, following this lorry with a bloody big photo of a gingerbread house that I've made in my little kitchen. It's so surreal and it's bonkers, and sometimes it drains you, and sometimes, like I say, I'm not saying I've thrown many cakes at the wall, but it has happened. And you do those things and, oh my God, I just wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. And I think I'm going to end it there, on that beautiful note of like, I'm exactly the same. And
Keep
I
it
wouldn't change it either.
positive.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it
Absolutely.
either. And I think like we're in a crazy, weird industry, but I love it for all its quirks. I absolutely adore it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, do you know what? We'll talk again in 5 years' time, and I'll probably have a completely different job.
Yeah.
You'll have 8 more tattoos, and 6 more dogs,
Yeah.
and and we'll both be doing something completely different, and we'll both
Yeah.
still be completely Barney, but absolutely loving it. And it's been
Exactly.
so wonderful talking to you. It's so nice when you get to speak to other people in this area, because a lot of people with normal 9 to 5s, when you try and explain it to them, they just see it as first world problems and just tell you to shut the fuck up. So it's just good to have a bitch. And also, I have been tallying our swear tally, as I told you I would before we started recording. And I'm going to be straight with you. I stopped at 45. And that was a while ago.
Well,
Good luck with the
that's
edit.
good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been absolutely fantastic chatting with you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow, and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!